Colonel Richard Brennan slammed his fist on the mahogany desk, his face twisted with rage as he hissed into the encrypted phone. "I don't give a damn about your ethics, Bannister. General Thompson dies on that table, or your daughter's scholarship disappears and those malpractice lawsuits I've been burying suddenly surface. You understand me?" He paused, listening to the surgeon's terrified whimpering. $500,000 says his heart stops during surgery. An unfortunate complication, a tragic loss. And if you fail me, doctor, I promise you'll wish you'd let me ruin your career instead of your life. He ended the call, smiling coldly. One dead general coming right up. But what Brennan didn't know was that the best surgeon wasn't Dr. Bannister. It was the black woman walking toward the operating room, the same woman he'd left for dead in Somalia 20 years ago. The one witness who could destroy him. And she was about to save the general's life, just to watch Brennan burn. General Marcus Thompson knew pain. He had known it intimately for 40 years of military service. Bullet wounds, shrapnel scars, 3 broken bones that never quite healed right. But the pain radiating from the base of his skull down his spine was different. It was the kind of pain that whispered promises of paralysis, of wheelchairs, of a proud warrior reduced to helplessness. He sat on the edge of the examination table at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, his posture rigid despite the agony, his jaw set in that familiar expression of controlled fury that had intimidated everyone from raw recruits to foreign dictators. At 58, his hair had gone completely silver, but his body was still granite, still dangerous. The only concession to weakness was the slight tremor in his left hand, a tremor that had started 3 months ago and gotten progressively worse. Dr. Harold Bannister, chief of neurosurgery, stood across from him, holding an MRI film up to the light box. Bannister was 52, soft around the middle, with the kind of smooth hands that suggested he'd spent more time at fundraising galas than in operating rooms. His smile was practiced, professional, and just a shade too eager. "General Thompson, I've reviewed your scans extensively," Bannister said, his voice dripping with the kind of false confidence that made Thompson's instincts scream. "The shrapnel fragment from your Somalia operation has migrated dangerously close to your C4 vertebra. Without intervention, you're looking at quadriplegia within 6 months, possibly sooner." "I can read an MRI, doctor," Thompson said, his voice like gravel. "What I want to know is who's going to cut it out." Bannister's smile widened. "Well, I'm chief of neurosurgery here at Walter Reed. I've performed over 300 spinal operations, and I've published extensively on microsurgical techniques for how many have you lost?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Bannister's smile faltered. "I'm sorry?" "How many patients have you lost on the table, doctor? How many times have your hands shaken when the pressure got too high? How many senators and congressmen have you operated on who walked out of here worse than when they walked in?" Bannister's face flushed. "General, I assure you my record is impeccable. Senator Holloway's complications were due to pre-existing conditions that Senator Holloway went in for a simple disc removal and came out unable to feel his feet." Thompson interrupted, leaning forward. The movement sent lightning bolts of pain down his arm, but he didn't flinch. "I read the sealed report, Bannister. You nicked the dura mater. Your hand slipped. That report is classified medical information." "How did you?" "I'm a 4-star general with Joint Special Operations Command, doctor. There isn't a piece of paper in this building I can't read." Thompson stood up, towering over the surgeon. "And what I've read tells me you're not the one I want holding a knife to my spine." Bannister took a step back, his professional veneer cracking. "General, I'm the chief of neurosurgery at this facility. If you don't trust me to perform this operation, then who exactly do you expect to?" "I want the best," Thompson said flatly. "I don't want the doctor with the most impressive title. I don't want the doctor who schmoozes with politicians. I want the surgeon this hospital calls when everything's gone to hell. I want the person who operates on the cases nobody else will touch. I want your ace, Bannister. And I know it's not you." The surgeon's face went from flushed to pale. He adjusted his glasses, looking anywhere but at the general's penetrating stare. "There is one other option," he said quietly, reluctantly. "But she's unconventional." "Name?" "Dr. Williams. Dr. Zara Williams. She's chief of trauma surgery." Bannister walked to the window, looking out at the manicured grounds as if seeking an escape route. "But, General, she doesn't take elective cases. She handles emergencies. Car accidents, gunshot wounds, catastrophic injuries. She's not the kind of surgeon who— Is she the best?" Bannister turned back, and for the first time, Thompson saw something genuine in his expression. Respect. Maybe even fear. "She's better than the best, General. She's a legend. The residents call her the miracle worker. I've seen her save patients that 5 other surgeons declared unsalvageable. She operates faster and cleaner than anyone I've ever witnessed. But I have to warn you, she has 0 tolerance for politics, 0 respect for rank, and 0 interest in coddling egos. She kicked a 3-star admiral out of her trauma bay last month because he wouldn't stop asking questions during a procedure." For the first time in weeks, Thompson felt something other than pain. He felt hope. "Perfect. Get her." "She's in surgery right now, a multi-vehicle pileup on I-95. She's been on her feet for 18 hours. Then she'll be warmed up," Thompson said, reaching for his uniform jacket. "Tell Dr. Williams that General Marcus Thompson is checking in. Tell her it's a matter of national security. And tell her I'm not asking, I'm ordering." Bannister opened his mouth to protest, then seemed to think better of it. "I'll make the call," he said, hurrying toward the door. "But, General, don't say I didn't warn you. Dr. Williams doesn't take orders from anyone." As the door closed, Thompson walked to the mirror mounted on the examination room wall. He pulled down the collar of his shirt, revealing the angry, puckered scar that ran from his shoulder blade up to the base of his skull. The scar was old, 20 years old, but the memory was fresh as yesterday's blood. Somalia, 2003. Operation Restore Hope, they'd called it. What a joke. There had been no hope in Mogadishu, only dust and death and the screams of the dying. He touched the scar gingerly, remembering the explosion, the heat, the metal tearing through his flesh, remembering her face. Lieutenant Zara Washington, the field medic who'd saved his life that day, who'd dragged him out of the burning vehicle while enemy fire tore up the ground around them. The woman with the fierce green eyes and the fearless hands, who told him to shut up and let her work while she dug shrapnel out of his back with nothing but a field knife and pure determination. The woman he'd loved. The woman he'd been ordered to leave behind. The woman he'd been told died in the field hospital bombing 3 days after he evacuated. Thompson had mourned Zara Washington for 20 years. He'd never married, never let anyone close, because no one could compare to the medic who'd faced death with a smile and told it to wait its turn. Her ghost had followed him through every promotion, every mission, every lonely night in officers' quarters around the world. He wondered if Dr. Zara Williams knew a Lieutenant Zara Washington. He wondered if he should ask. He wondered if he wanted to know the answer. The pain flared again, sharp and insistent, dragging him back to the present. Thompson steadied himself against the examination table, breathing through the agony. Whatever happened next, whoever this Dr. Williams turned out to be, he needed that shrapnel out of his spine. He needed to live long enough to do what he'd been planning for the past 6 months. He needed to live long enough to testify. 3 months ago, Thompson had stumbled onto something that made his blood run cold. Deep in the Pentagon archives, Buried under layers of classification and bureaucratic red tape, he'd found the original after-action reports from Somalia, 2003. The reports that didn't match the official narrative. The reports that showed Colonel Richard Brennan, now a powerful Pentagon intelligence official, had been running an illegal arms smuggling operation out of Mogadishu, selling American weapons to warlords and pocketing millions. The reports that showed the field hospital bombing wasn't enemy action. It was arson. It was murder. It was a cover-up. And Thompson had evidence. Files, photographs, witness statements from the 3 soldiers who'd survived the field hospital attack. He'd been preparing to take it all to the Senate Armed Services Committee, preparing to burn Brennan's career to ashes and expose the rot at the heart of military contracting. Then the headaches had started. Then the tremors. Then the pain that wouldn't quit. His personal physician had been baffled. The shrapnel had been stable for 2 decades. Why would it suddenly start migrating? Thompson had his suspicions, dark suspicions that involved quarterly medical checkups and the vitamin injections his doctor insisted he take for bone density. He suspected someone was poisoning him. Someone who wanted him dead before he could talk. Someone like Colonel Richard Brennan. The door opened. Thompson turned, expecting to see Bannister again. Instead, a woman stood in the doorway. She was tall, maybe 5'10", with rich brown skin and close-cropped natural hair that framed a face that could have been carved from mahogany. She wore navy blue scrubs spattered with what looked like dried blood, and her eyes were the color of honey in sunlight, sharp and assessing, and utterly fearless. She looked tired. She looked like she'd been to war and back. She looked beautiful. She looked exactly like Lieutenant Zara Washington, 20 years older and infinitely more dangerous. Thompson's world tilted. The room swam. He gripped the edge of the examination table, his knuckles white, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. "General Thompson," the woman said, her voice low and professional and achingly familiar. "I'm Dr. Zara Williams, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Dr. Bannister said you requested the best, so here I am." She walked into the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. She didn't look at him directly, keeping her attention on the tablet in her hands, scrolling through what he assumed were his medical files. "I've reviewed your scans," she continued, her tone brisk, clinical. "You've got a 4mm fragment of Soviet-era shrapnel lodged against your C4 vertebra. It's migrated 7mm in the past 3 months, which is unusual for a 20-year-old injury. The location is precarious. One wrong move and you're a quadriplegic. One sneeze at the wrong angle and you're dead. It's going to be a complex operation, high risk, probably 8 to 10 hours in the OR. She finally looked up from the tablet. Her eyes met his. The air left the room. Thompson tried to speak. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stared at her, at the small scar on her left cheek that she'd gotten from a tent pole during a mortar attack. At the way she stood, weight balanced on the balls of her feet, ready to move in any direction. At the familiar set of her jaw that said she'd walked through fire and come out forged harder. "Zara," he whispered. The name came out broken, desperate. Dr. Williams's expression didn't change. "I'm sorry, General. Do we know each other?" "Don't," Thompson said, his voice raw. "Don't do that. Don't pretend. I know it's you. Zara Washington. Lieutenant Zara Washington, 44th Medical Brigade, Mogadishu, 2003. Something flickered in her eyes. Not recognition. Something colder. Something like controlled rage. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, General," she said, her voice perfectly level. "My name is Zara Williams. I've never served in the military. Now, if we could get back to your medical situation." You have a scar on your ribs from when you got hit with shrapnel pulling Corporal Miller out of a burning Humvee, Thompson interrupted, taking a step toward her. You have a tattoo of a caduceus on your left shoulder blade. You have a birthmark shaped like Africa on your right hip. You told me about it the night before the hospital got hit. The night you told me you loved me. Dr. Williams set the tablet down on the counter with deliberate care. When she looked at him again, the professional mask had cracked. What showed through wasn't love. It wasn't joy at a miraculous reunion. It was fury. The night before you left me to die, you mean? She said quietly, dangerously. Thompson reeled back as if she'd struck him. Zara, I didn't... They told me you were dead. They told me everyone in the field hospital was killed. There was a bombing, a fire. They said thermal imaging showed no survivors. Stop talking, Zara said, her voice rising. Stop talking right now, Marcus. You don't get to do this. You don't get to stand there and pretend you didn't abandon me. I never abandoned you. I was ordered to evacuate. The chopper took RPG fire. We crashed. I woke up in Germany 2 weeks later and they told me you were gone. You flew away, Zara shouted, and suddenly she wasn't the composed professional surgeon anymore. She was the 25-year-old medic who'd waited in the dark while the man she loved disappeared into the sky. I saw your helicopter, Marcus. I watched it bank west while we were taking fire from the east. You left me there with 3 dying soldiers and a field hospital that was falling apart. You left me there and you never came back. I tried! Thompson's voice cracked. I fought the pilot for the controls. I tried to make him turn around. We went down hard, Zara. I broke my back. That's where this shrapnel came from. It's not from the enemy. It's from our own crash. I spent 6 months in physical therapy learning to walk again, and every single day I thought about you. Every single day I mourned you. Zara laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mourned me? How convenient. How noble. Did it make you feel better, Marcus? Did it ease your conscience to light a candle and shed a tear for the woman you left behind? What was I supposed to do? Thompson shouted back. I was told you were dead. I tried to get a search team authorized. I tried to go back for your body, for closure, for anything. The Pentagon denied it, said the area was too hot, said there was nothing left to recover. Colonel Brennan himself came to my hospital room and told me to let you go. At Brennan's name, something changed in Zara's expression. The anger didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else. Recognition, understanding, and a new kind of fear. Brennan, she repeated slowly. Colonel Richard Brennan. Now Pentagon Intelligence Director Richard Brennan. You know him, Thompson said. It wasn't a question. He's the one who debriefed me when I got back, Zara said, her voice distant now, remembering. 3 days after the field hospital attack, a UN convoy found us. Me and 3 soldiers, the only survivors. They medevaced us to Ramstein, then back to the States. I was in a military hospital in Virginia for 2 weeks. Then Brennan showed up. She walked to the window, her back to Thompson, her shoulders rigid. He told me the mission was classified. He told me that Captain Marcus Thompson had been killed in action during the evacuation. He told me that I was never in Somalia, that the field hospital never existed, that the operation never happened. He said if I ever spoke about it, ever tried to access records, ever contacted the families of the soldiers who died, I would be court-martialed for breaching national security and sent to Leavenworth for the rest of my life. Thompson felt ice water flood his veins. He told you I was dead. He showed me a death certificate, Zara said, her voice hollow. Official Pentagon letterhead. Captain Marcus Thompson, killed in action, Somalia, 2003. He said they'd already had the memorial service. He said my name would never appear on any official record. He offered me a medical discharge for psychological trauma, a new identity, and a full ride to any medical school I wanted. The alternative was a court-martial and prison. So you took it, Thompson said softly. What choice did I have? Zara turned back to face him, and her eyes were wet. I was 25 years old, Marcus. I had watched 17 people die in that field hospital. I had performed amputations with a hacksaw and tourniquets made from parachute cord. I had killed 2 men with my bare hands when they tried to breach our perimeter. And then I came home and was told the man I loved was dead, and everything I'd survived was a lie that could send me to prison if I ever spoke the truth. She wiped her eyes angrily, as if furious at herself for the tears. So yes, I took the deal. I changed my name from Washington to Williams. I went to Johns Hopkins Medical School. I became a surgeon because I couldn't save those 17 soldiers, but I could save the next 17, and the 17 after that. I buried Zara Washington and built Dr. Zara Williams from scratch. And I never, ever let myself think about the captain who promised to marry me and then vanished into the sky. The silence between them was suffocating. 20 years of grief, anger, betrayal, and lost love filled the small examination room until Thompson thought he might drown in it. He lied to both of us, Thompson finally said. Brennan lied to both of us. He told me you were dead. He told you I was dead. He made sure we could never find each other. Why would he do that, Zara? Why go to such lengths to keep us apart? Zara's eyes narrowed. The surgeon's analytical mind was taking over, pushing past the emotion. You said you tried to get a search team authorized. You said you wanted to go back for my body. What else did you want to go back for, Marcus? What else was in that field hospital that Brennan didn't want found? Thompson's breath caught. You know something. The night before the attack, I was cataloging medical supplies, Zara said slowly, carefully. We'd gotten a shipment from a contractor, Nova Tech Industries. But when I opened the crates, half of them weren't medical supplies. They were weapons. American weapons. M4 rifles, grenades, ammunition, all stamped with U.S. military serial numbers. I reported it to the commanding officer, Captain Reeves. He said he'd handle it. Captain Reeves died in the field hospital bombing, Thompson said, along with everyone else who saw those crates, Zara said. Everyone except me and 3 soldiers who were too injured to remember anything coherent. And now you're telling me Brennan was running an arms smuggling operation out of Somalia? I found the evidence 3 months ago, Thompson said. Financial records, shipping manifests, everything. Brennan was selling weapons to warlords and keeping the profits. Novatech was his shell company. The field hospital attack wasn't the enemy, Zara. It was Brennan cleaning up loose ends. He tried to kill everyone who could testify against him. Including you, Zara said. He tried to crash your helicopter. And he's trying to kill me again, Thompson said grimly. He pulled out his phone, pulling up the medical records he'd been quietly investigating. 3 months ago, I told my chief of staff I was going to the Senate with the evidence. 2 weeks later, my doctor started me on vitamin injections for bone density. That's when the headaches started. That's when the shrapnel started moving. He showed her the records. Zara scanned them, her eyes widening. These aren't vitamin injections, she said, her voice tight. This is a calcium chelator. It's designed to pull calcium out of bones. Over time, it would degrade the bone around the shrapnel, causing it to migrate. Marcus, someone's been poisoning you. Slowly, carefully, making it look like a natural progression of an old injury. Brennan, Thompson said. He knew I'd need surgery. He probably planned for me to die on the table. A surgical complication. A tragic loss of a war hero. No questions asked. Except you didn't ask for just any surgeon, Zara said, understanding dawning. You demanded the best. You demanded me. I didn't know it was you, Thompson said. But Brennan doesn't know that. Right now he probably thinks Dr. Zara Williams is just another doctor. He doesn't know you're the medic from Somalia. He doesn't know you're the witness who survived. Zara walked to the door, locked it, and turned back to him. Her expression had transformed. She wasn't a heartbroken woman anymore. She was a soldier, preparing for battle. "We have a serious problem, General," she said. "If Brennan finds out I'm alive and I'm your surgeon, he's going to assume we've compared notes. He's going to assume we know everything. He can't let both of us live." "I know," Thompson said. "That's why we need to be very careful about what happens next." "What happens next?" Zara said, walking to the light box and pulling up his scans again. "Is that I perform the surgery. I remove the shrapnel. I save your life. And then we both go to the Senate, and we bury Richard Brennan so deep he'll never see daylight again." "He'll try to stop the surgery," Thompson warned. "He'll send people. He'll—" "Let him try," Zara said, and there was steel in her voice. "This is my operating room, Marcus. This is my domain. And I haven't let a patient die in 7 years. I'm not about to start with you." She pulled out her own phone, typing rapidly. "I'm going to schedule your surgery for tomorrow morning, 0600 hours. I'm hand-picking my team, people I trust absolutely. Dr. James Chen, my senior resident, he's former Navy, solid as they come. Dr. Patricia Lopez, my anesthesiologist. She grew up in East LA and doesn't scare easily. And I'm bringing in 2 surgical nurses who've worked with me for 5 years. No one else gets in that OR. No observers, no Pentagon liaisons, no exceptions." "Brennan will fight it," Thompson said. "Brennan can go to hell," Zara replied. "I'm the chief of trauma surgery at Walter Reed. I outrank Bannister in the surgical hierarchy. When I say who's in my operating room, that's final. And if anyone tries to override me, I'll make such a stink that every medical journal and news outlet in the country will be asking questions." Thompson felt something he hadn't felt in months. He felt safe. This woman, this incredible, fierce, brilliant woman he'd thought he'd lost forever, was standing between him and death with nothing but a scalpel and absolute determination. "Zara," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving, for not finding you, for mourning you instead of searching harder. I'm sorry." She looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not ready to forgive you, Marcus. I don't know if I ever will be, but I'm not ready to lose you again either. So we're going to get through this surgery. We're going to take down Brennan. And then we're going to figure out what the hell we are to each other now, 20 years later." "Fair enough," Thompson said. Zara walked to the door, unlocked it, then paused. "One more thing, General. When I have you on that table tomorrow, when I'm cutting into your spine, I need you to trust me completely." "Can you do that?" "With my life," Thompson said without hesitation. A small, sad smile crossed her face. "Good, because that's exactly what you'll be doing." She opened the door and left, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Thompson stood alone in the examination room, his hand on his scarred neck, his heart pounding. Zara Washington was alive, and she was about to save his life for the 2nd time. Assuming, of course, that Colonel Richard Brennan didn't kill them both first. The moment Zara left the examination room, her professional composure shattered. She made it exactly 15 feet down the hallway before her legs gave out. She caught herself against the wall, her hand pressed flat against the cool plaster, her breath coming in sharp, painful gasps that had nothing to do with the 18-hour surgery she'd just finished, and everything to do with the ghost sitting in exam room 4. Marcus Thompson was alive. The man she'd mourned for 20 years. The man she'd dreamed about on endless lonely nights. The man whose dog tags she still kept in a locked box at the back of her closet. was alive and 15 feet behind her, asking her to cut into his spine.
Dr. Williams, are you all right?
A young nurse, Sarah Chen, touched her shoulder gently.
You look like you've seen a ghost.
Zara almost laughed at the accuracy.
I'm fine, Sarah. Just exhausted. That pile-up case was brutal.
You saved 4 lives today, Sarah said with open admiration. Dr. Bannister said it was impossible, but you did it anyway. Bannister's always been better at giving up than fighting, Zara muttered, pushing herself upright. Her hands were shaking. She shoved them into her pockets before Sarah could notice. Listen, I need you to do something for me. I'm scheduling a high-risk spinal surgery for tomorrow morning, 0600 hours. General Marcus Thompson. I want Dr. Chen scrubbed in, Dr. Lopez on anesthesia, and I want you and Maria as my surgical nurses. Sarah's eyes widened.
General Thompson? The General Thompson? The one who took down the Khartoum cell? Dr. Williams, that's huge. But why such short notice? These cases usually take weeks to prepare.
Because the shrapnel in his neck is migrating faster than anyone expected, Zara said, the lie coming easily because it was also partly true. And because I don't trust anyone else to keep him alive. What she didn't say was that she didn't trust anyone else, period. Not with Marcus Thompson's life. Not with the secret that had just exploded back into her world like a grenade with the pin pulled. Sarah nodded seriously.
I'll notify the team. Anything else?
Yes. No observers. No Pentagon liaisons. No medical students. No exceptions. This is a closed OR, and I want security posted outside. Anyone tries to get in who isn't on my list, you call me immediately. That's unusual protocol, Dr. Williams.
The patient is a 4-star general with enemies, Zara said flatly. Unusual situations require unusual protocols. Can you handle it?
Yes, ma'am, Sarah said, and hurried off. Zara stood alone in the hallway, listening to the familiar sounds of the hospital around her. Monitors beeping, gurneys rolling, the soft murmur of voices discussing medications and vital signs. This was her world now. Clean, controlled, governed by protocols and procedures. A world where she could save lives instead of watching them end in fire and blood. But Marcus Thompson had just dragged her back to Somalia, back to the dust and the screams and the terrible choices she'd made to survive. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her swipe to accept. Dr. Williams? The voice was smooth, cultured, vaguely familiar. Or should I say Lieutenant Washington? Zara's blood turned to ice.
Who is this?
Someone who's very interested in the surgery you're about to perform, the voice continued. General Thompson is a valuable asset to this country, Doctor. It would be tragic if something went wrong during such a delicate operation. Tragic, but understandable. These things happen, don't they?
If you're threatening me,
I'm not threatening anyone, the voice said pleasantly. I'm simply reminding you that surgeons make mistakes, even the best ones. And sometimes those mistakes are actually the right call, if you understand what I'm saying. There's a numbered account waiting for you in the Caymans, 7 figures. All you have to do is let nature take its course tomorrow morning. Zara's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles went white.
I took an oath. Do no harm.
That includes not listening to whatever corrupt piece of filth is on this line trying to buy me. Such righteous indignation, the voice said, amused. Tell me, Doctor, does General Thompson know that you've been lying to him? Does he know that you knew he was alive for the past 6 months? The world stopped. That's right, the voice continued softly, dangerously. We've known about your little investigation for quite some time. All those late-night searches for Captain Marcus Thompson in the Pentagon database. All those FOIA requests you filed under different names. All those phone calls to the Veterans Affairs Office trying to track down his service record. You've been looking for him, haven't you? And when you found him, you didn't reach out. You stayed quiet. Why is that, I wonder? Zara's mind raced. She had searched for Marcus, obsessively, for years after leaving the military, but she'd stopped 6 years ago when she finally accepted he was dead. This person was lying, trying to manipulate her. Except they knew about Lieutenant Washington. They knew about Somalia. They knew too much. You have until tomorrow morning to make the right choice, the voice said. Let the general die peacefully on the table, collect your money, and live a long, comfortable life. Or save him and discover that some ghosts should have stayed buried. The line went dead. Zara stood frozen in the hallway, her heart hammering against her ribs. Brennan. It had to be Brennan. He knew she was alive. He knew she was Marcus's surgeon. And he was making his move. She pulled up her contacts, scrolling to a name she hadn't called in 3 years. FBI. Special Agent Monica Torres, a woman she'd met during a case involving medical fraud. Torres was one of the few people in law enforcement Zara actually trusted. The phone rang twice before Torres answered. Dr.
Williams, this is a surprise. What's wrong?
I need to meet with you, tonight, somewhere private. I have information about a conspiracy involving a Pentagon official, attempted murder, and a 20-year-old cover-up. There was a pause. Are you in immediate danger? I don't know yet, Zara said honestly. But I'm performing surgery on a general tomorrow morning, and someone just offered me money to let him die on the table. Jesus, Torres breathed. Okay, listen to me carefully. Don't go home tonight. Don't go anywhere predictable. There's a safe house in Arlington, 2247 Wilson Boulevard, apartment 6C. I'll meet you there in 2 hours. And Dr. Williams, if someone's threatening you, they might be watching you. Be careful. Zara ended the call and looked back toward exam room 4. She should tell Marcus about the phone call, about the threat, about everything. But if she went back in there, if she looked at him again, she might break. She might tell him everything she'd been holding inside for 20 years. And she couldn't afford that weakness right now. She turned and walked toward the surgeon's lounge instead. She needed to change, to think, to prepare. But when she pushed open the door, she found Dr. Harold Bannister waiting for her. He looked terrible. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he gripped a glass of whiskey. When he saw her, he stood up so fast the chair nearly toppled. Dr. Williams, we need to talk. Not now, Bannister. I have a surgery to prepare for. That's what I need to talk to you about, he said desperately. You can't operate on General Thompson. You need to refuse the case. Tell him you're not qualified. Tell him you're too tired. Tell him anything. But do not take him into that OR tomorrow. Zara closed the door behind her, studying Bannister's face. The fear there wasn't faked. Someone got to you, didn't they? Bannister's laugh was broken, bitter. Got to me. They own me, Williams. They own my house, my daughter's education, my entire goddamn life. I made mistakes, financial mistakes, and they bought up my debts. All of them. And now they're calling in the marker. Who's they? I don't know names. I just get phone calls, instructions, wire transfers. He drained the whiskey in one gulp. They told me to operate on Thompson myself. They told me to make sure he didn't survive. And when I hesitated, when I tried to refuse, they sent me a video of my daughter leaving her dorm at Georgetown. Just her walking to class. But the message was clear. Zara felt sick. So you were going to kill him? I was going to try to save him and fail, Bannister said, and there were tears in his eyes now. I'm not a murderer, Williams. I'm just a coward. But then Thompson demanded you instead, and I thought maybe there was a way out. You're good enough to save him despite any interference. You're good enough to beat them. And now they've threatened you again. They said if you operate and he survives, they'll kill my daughter, Bannister whispered. They'll make it look like an accident, a mugging gone wrong, a car crash. They gave me details, Williams. They told me exactly how they'd do it. These people are serious. Zara walked to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Below, the parking lot was filling with the evening shift, nurses and doctors arriving for the night. Somewhere out there, Brennan's people were watching, waiting, preparing to make their move. "What's your daughter's name?" she asked quietly. "Jennifer. Jenny. She's 20 years old. She wants to be a teacher." Bannister's voice broke. "She's all I have, Williams. Her mother died when she was 8. I raised her alone. I can't let anything happen to her." Zara turned back to face him. "Here's what's going to happen, Bannister. You're going to call your daughter right now. You're going to tell her that you have a family emergency and she needs to go stay with a friend for a few days, someone who lives off campus, someone whose address isn't in any university database. Then you're going to give me her friend's information, and I'm going to have the FBI put a protective detail on her." Bannister stared at her. "The FBI?" "I'm already involving them. This is bigger than one surgery, Bannister. This is a conspiracy that goes back 20 years and involves weapons smuggling, murder, and treason. General Thompson and I are both witnesses to crimes that someone very powerful wants buried. They tried to kill us once in Somalia. They're trying again now. But this time, we're not running. We're fighting back." "You can't fight these people," Bannister said hopelessly. "They're everywhere. They have resources, connections, power." "And I have the truth," Zara interrupted. "And I have Marcus Thompson, who's been collecting evidence against them for months. And I have a scalpel and the skill to use it. So here's your choice, Doctor. You can keep being a coward and let them own you forever. Or you can help me save a good man's life and maybe, just maybe, save your own soul in the process." Bannister looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he pulled out his phone and dialed his daughter. 2 hours later, Zara sat in the Arlington safe house across from FBI Special Agent Monica Torres, a slim woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Between them on the coffee table was everything Zara had brought. Her old military ID with the name Lieutenant Zara Washington, photographs from Somalia, the debriefing papers Brennan had made her sign in 2003, and a detailed timeline she'd written out of everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Torres studied the materials in silence, her expression growing darker by the minute. Finally, she looked up. "This is insane." "I know. You're telling me that a Pentagon intelligence director has been running an illegal arms operation for over 20 years, that he tried to murder an entire field hospital full of American soldiers to cover it up, and that he's now trying to assassinate a 4-star general to prevent him from testifying to Congress?" "Yes." "And you have proof of all this?" "General Thompson has the financial records and shipping manifests," Zara said. "I have eyewitness testimony about the weapons caches in the field hospital, and tomorrow morning, when I remove the shrapnel from Thompson's spine, we'll have physical evidence that he was poisoned. The migration pattern isn't natural. Someone's been dosing him with calcium chelators to force the metal to shift." Torres leaned back, running her hands through her hair. Okay. This is way above my pay grade, but I believe you. The problem is, if this Brennan has as much power as you say, we need to be very careful about who we involve. The wrong person hears about this investigation, and you both end up dead before you can testify." "So what do we do?" "First, I'm getting protective details assigned to you and General Thompson, starting now. Off-the-books agents I trust personally. Second, I'm contacting the Inspector General's office and requesting an emergency meeting. We need someone with the authority to protect you both and investigate these allegations. Third, she looked at Zara seriously. Third, you still have to perform that surgery tomorrow. Can you do it, knowing that someone might try to stop you? Zara thought about Marcus lying on that examination table, his hand trembling, his eyes full of pain and hope, and 20 years of grief. She thought about the young medic she'd been in Somalia, the one who'd kept 3 dying soldiers alive through sheer willpower and refused to give up even when the world was burning around her. "I can do it," she said. "I have to." Torres nodded. "Then let's make sure you survive long enough to finish the job." At midnight, Zara finally returned to Walter Reed. She'd refused Torres's suggestion to stay at the safe house, insisting she needed to prepare for the surgery. What she really needed was to see Marcus one more time before she cut into his spine with half the Pentagon trying to kill them both. She found him still awake in exam room 4, now converted to a private room. He was sitting up in bed, reading through files on a tablet, his face illuminated by the blue glow. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened. "I was wondering if you'd come back." "I'm your surgeon," Zara said, closing the door behind her. "Of course I came back." "That's not what I meant." She pulled up a chair beside the bed, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had been carrying her through the day was finally fading, leaving her feeling hollow and ancient. "I got a phone call tonight. Someone offering me money to let you die on the table." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Brennan." "Probably. They also knew things they shouldn't know. About my past. About Lieutenant Washington." She met his eyes. "Marcus, they know I'm alive." "They know we've reconnected, which means they're going to try something tomorrow during the surgery." "Cancel it," he said immediately. "We'll find another way. I won't risk your life for mine." "There is no other way," Zara said firmly. "That shrapnel is going to kill you, probably within a week. And even if we had time to find another surgeon, Brennan would just get to them too. I'm the only one you can trust." "Zara." "I'm doing the surgery, Marcus. End of discussion." She stood up, pacing the small room. "But I need to know everything, every detail about what you found, what Brennan's been doing, who else might be involved. Because if something goes wrong tomorrow, someone needs to know the whole truth." For the next hour, Marcus told her everything. The financial records he'd discovered showing payments from Novatech Industries to offshore accounts controlled by Brennan. The shipping manifests that proved American weapons were being sold to Somali warlords. The witness statements from the 3 soldiers who'd survived the field hospital attack. Soldiers who'd been systematically reassigned to dangerous missions over the years, until only one remained alive. "His name is Sergeant James Chen," Marcus said. "He's living in San Francisco now, working as an EMT. He's the only other person besides us who can testify about what was in those weapons crates." Zara's head snapped up. "Chen? Dr. James Chen? My senior surgical resident?" Marcus stared at her. "What?" "James Chen is my resident," Zara said slowly. "He's been working with me for 2 years. Former Navy medic, exceptional talent. One of the best young surgeons I've ever trained." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos until she found one from a hospital charity event. "Is this him?" Marcus looked at the photo and went white. "That's him. That's Sergeant Chen." "Zara, what the hell is he doing at Walter Reed?" "I don't know," she said, her mind racing. "He applied to our residency program through normal channels. His credentials were impeccable. I never questioned it." She looked at Marcus. "You think he's working for Brennan?" "I think it's one hell of a coincidence that the only surviving witness to Brennan's crimes just happens to be working as your surgical resident right before I need emergency surgery." Zara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Looking forward to working with you tomorrow, Dr. Williams. It's going to be a surgery to remember. J.C. She showed Marcus the message. His face hardened into the expression of a soldier preparing for war. He's been here the whole time, Marcus said quietly. Watching you. Waiting. And tomorrow, when you're focused on the surgery, when your hands are inside my spine and you're at your most vulnerable, he's going to make his move.
Then we don't let him in the OR, Zara said. He's your senior resident. You said yourself he's on your surgical team. I'll uninvite him. I'll say I want someone else. And tip him off that we're on to him? Marcus shook his head. No, we need to be smarter than that. We need to catch him in the act. Zara looked at him like he was insane. You want me to let a potential saboteur into the operating room while I'm cutting into your spinal cord? I want you to have FBI agents posing as surgical staff watching his every move, Marcus corrected. I want him to think everything's going according to plan, right up until the moment we spring the trap. And I want him alive so he can testify against Brennan. You're asking me to perform the most delicate surgery of my career while running a counterintelligence operation. I'm asking you to do what you did in Somalia, Marcus said, reaching out to take her hand. Stay calm under fire. Trust your team. And refuse to let the bastards win. Zara looked down at their joined hands, at the scars on his knuckles that matched scars she carried on her own body. 20 years ago, they'd fought side by side in the dust and blood of Mogadishu. Tomorrow, they'd fight again in the sterile brightness of an operating room. Okay, she said quietly. But Marcus, if something goes wrong, if Chen makes a move and I have to choose between catching him and saving your life, I'm choosing you. Every time. Do you understand? He squeezed her hand. I wouldn't expect anything less. She stayed with him until 3 a.m, talking about everything and nothing, filling in the gaps of 20 lost years. He told her about the missions he'd run, the promotions he'd earned, the empty victories that meant nothing without someone to share them with. She told him about medical school, about the first time she'd saved a life in the ER, about the patients she'd lost, and the ones she'd managed to pull back from the edge. They didn't talk about love. They didn't talk about what came next if they both survived tomorrow. But it hung in the air between them, unspoken and enormous. Finally, Zara stood to leave. I need to get a few hours of sleep before the surgery. Try to rest, okay? Zara, he said as she reached the door, in Somalia, that last night before everything went to hell, you told me you loved me. Do you remember? She froze, her hand on the doorknob. I remember. Did you mean it? She looked back at him, at the man who'd been her whole world once, who'd been dead to her for 20 years, who was alive and real, and asking her the one question she'd never let herself answer. Yes, she whispered. I meant it. Good, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. Because I loved you too. I love you still. And I need you to know that before you cut into my spine tomorrow. I need you to know that if something goes wrong, if I don't make it through this, the last 20 years of my life were empty because you weren't in them. You were it for me, Zara. You were always it. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. Then you better survive this surgery, General. Because I'm not done being angry at you yet. And I can't yell at a dead man. She left before he could respond, before she could break down completely. She had 3 hours to sleep, shower, and prepare for the most important surgery of her life. 3 hours before she'd have to save the man she loved, while the man who'd tried to kill them both watched from the shadows and waited for his chance to finish what he'd started 20 years ago in the burning desert of Somalia. Zara didn't sleep. She sat in her office staring at James Chen's personnel file on her computer screen,
searching for something she'd missed 2 years ago when she'd hired him. His military record was spotless. Navy corpsman, multiple commendations, honorable discharge after 8 years of service. Medical school at UCSF, top of his class. Residency applications that showed genuine passion for trauma surgery. Nothing suspicious. Nothing that screamed traitor. But Marcus's words kept echoing in her mind. One hell of a coincidence. At 04:45 hours, her office door opened without a knock. Agent Torres walked in, followed by 2 people Zara had never seen before. A tall black woman in surgical scrubs and a compact Latino man also dressed for the OR. Dr. Williams, meet Special Agents Keisha Washington and Miguel Santos, Torres said quietly. They're both trained paramedics with OR experience. As of right now, they're part of your surgical team. Zara stood up. You can't just plant federal agents in my operating room. We can, and we did, Torres said flatly. Washington will be your second scrub nurse. Santos will be monitoring anesthesia with Dr. Lopez. They'll be armed with concealed weapons, and they'll be watching Dr. Chen every second. If he makes a move, they'll stop him. Armed? In my OR? Zara's voice rose. Do you have any idea how insane that is? One stray bullet and we could hit oxygen lines, monitoring equipment, or, God forbid, the patient. One stray scalpel from Chen and the patient's dead anyway, Torres countered. This is happening, doctor. You focus on the surgery. Let my people handle security. Agent Washington stepped forward. She had kind eyes, but a warrior's posture. Dr. Williams, I know this is unorthodox, but I've been undercover in medical facilities before. I know how to blend in, how to assist without getting in your way. I won't compromise your surgery, I promise. Zara wanted to argue. Every instinct as a surgeon screamed against having unknown variables in her OR. But the rational part of her brain, the part that had survived Somalia by trusting the right people at the right time, told her to accept the help. Fine, she said. But in that operating room, I'm God. You follow my orders without question. If I tell you to move, you move. If I tell you to hand me an instrument, you hand it to me. And if you discharge a weapon in my OR, you better make damn sure it's worth it. Understood, Washington said. Santos nodded silently. Torres checked her watch. Surgery's in 1 hour. I've got 2 more agents posing as orderlies outside the OR. Chen won't be able to make a move without us seeing it. Just do what you do best, doctor. Save lives. At 05:30, Zara stood in the scrub room, methodically washing her hands and forearms with chlorhexidine soap. The familiar ritual usually calmed her, centered her, prepared her mentally for the work ahead. Today, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dr. Patricia Lopez walked in, already in her scrubs, her graying hair tucked under a surgical cap. She'd been Zara's anesthesiologist for 6 years, a steady presence who could keep a patient stable through the worst traumas. You look like hell, Zara, Patricia said bluntly, starting her own scrub. What's going on? And don't tell me nothing, I've known you too long. Zara wanted to lie, but Patricia deserved better. The patient's life is in danger from more than just the surgery. There may be someone trying to sabotage the operation. Patricia's hands stilled under the running water. Jesus Christ, who? I can't tell you that yet, but there are federal agents in the OR posing as staff. They're there to protect the general and catch the person responsible. And you're still going through with this surgery? I have to, Zara said. The shrapnel will kill him within a week. We don't have time for Plan B. Patricia resumed scrubbing, her jaw set. Okay, then I'll keep him stable no matter what happens. You just focus on the spine work. And Zara, whatever's happening here, whoever's trying to stop this surgery, they're going to fail. Because you're the best damn surgeon I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of surgeons. The words steadied something in Zara's chest. She finished scrubbing and pushed through the doors into OR1. Marcus was already on the table, positioned face down in the prone position, his head secured in a Mayfield clamp. The neurosurgical bed held him perfectly still, exposing the back of his neck where Zara would make her incision. He was awake but sedated, his eyes visible through the gap in the sterile drapes.
Good morning, General,
Zara said, her voice professionally calm despite her racing heart.
How are you feeling?
Like I'm about to let a woman I love cut into my spine while assassins circle the room, Marcus said, his words slightly slurred from the pre-op medication. So, pretty good, all things considered. Despite everything, Zara almost smiled.
The sedation's making you honest.
The sedation's making me brave enough to say what I should have said 20 years ago. His eyes found hers. I trust you, Zara. Completely.
Then close your eyes and let me work,
she said softly. Dr. James Chen entered the OR, already scrubbed and gowned. He was 32, handsome in a quiet way, with steady hands and an easy smile that had charmed half the nurses in the hospital. Today, his smile seemed predatory.
Morning, Dr. Williams, he said cheerfully.
Ready for the big show? Zara studied his face, searching for any sign of malice, any hint of the man who'd sent that threatening text. She saw nothing but professional enthusiasm.
Let's get started, she said.
Agent Washington, introduced to the team as Nurse Johnson, handed Zara the scalpel. Their eyes met briefly, and Washington gave an almost imperceptible nod. Ready. Zara pressed the blade to Marcus's skin.
Time of incision, 0602 hours.
The surgery began. For the first 90 minutes, everything went perfectly. Zara dissected through the muscle layers with precise, economical movements, exposing the bony vertebrae beneath. Chen assisted competently, retracting tissue, suctioning blood, anticipating her needs before she voiced them. He was good. Damn good. Which made him either innocent or dangerously skilled at deception.
Approaching the lamina, Zara announced. I need the high-speed drill.
Chen handed it to her without hesitation. She activated the drill, the high-pitched whine filling the OR as she carefully removed the thin layer of bone covering the spinal cord. Beneath it, the dura mater gleamed white and pristine, the protective membrane that surrounded the most vital structures of Marcus's nervous system.
Dural exposure complete, she said. No visible tears. We're in good shape.
Patricia's voice came through the intercom from the anesthesia station.
Vitals stable, blood pressure 118/76, heart rate 68.
He's doing great. Then Chen's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was barely audible over the OR noises, but Zara heard it. She glanced up sharply. Chen's face had gone pale. Dr. Chen, phones are not permitted in the OR, she said coldly.
You know that.
I'm sorry, Dr. Williams. I thought I'd turned it off. He reached for his pocket. Agent Washington moved faster. Let me get that for you, Doctor. You're sterile. Her hand intercepted his, pulling the phone free. She glanced at the screen, and her expression hardened.
Dr. Williams, I think you need to see this.
Zara stepped back from the table, letting another resident take her place, maintaining retraction. Washington showed her the phone screen. The text message read, "Window closing in 10 minutes. Do it now, or the girl dies. B." Zara's blood went cold.
Agent Washington, detain Dr. Chen immediately.
Chen's easy smile vanished. In one smooth motion, he grabbed the surgical drill from the instrument tray and lunged toward the table, toward Marcus's exposed spinal cord. He never made it. Agent Santos, who'd been standing quietly by the anesthesia cart, intercepted him with a tackle that sent them both crashing into the equipment tray. Instruments scattered across the floor with a metallic clatter.
Get him out of my OR! Zara shouted. Now!
Santos and Washington dragged Chen toward the door, the young surgeon fighting like a wild animal.
You don't understand. They have my sister! They'll kill her if I don't do this! Your sister's safe, Torres's voice crackled through the intercom. She must have been watching from the observation room. We picked her up 2 hours ago. She's in protective custody. Stand down, Dr. Chen. The fight went out of him. Santos cuffed his hands behind his back, while Chen sagged between them, sobbing. She's really safe? You're not lying? She's safe, Torres confirmed. And so is Jennifer Bannister. We've got them both. Chen looked at Zara, his face twisted with anguish. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They threatened my sister, said they'd make it look like an accident. I didn't know what else to do. You could have trusted me, Zara said, her voice shaking with fury and adrenaline. You could have come to me for help instead of agreeing to murder a patient. Get him out, Santos said, dragging Chen toward the door. As they disappeared, Zara turned back to the table. Her hands were trembling. The general was still sedated, still stable, still completely vulnerable on her table. And she still had to remove the shrapnel from millimeters away from his spinal cord. Dr. Williams, Patricia said gently, do you need a moment? No, Zara said, forcing her hands to steady. I need to finish this surgery. Someone page Dr. Richardson from neurosurgery. Tell him I need a second assist immediately. She returned to the table, to the microscope, to the delicate work of separating scar tissue from metal. Her world narrowed to the magnified field of view, to the tiny movements of her instruments, to the rhythm of her own breathing. 40 minutes later, she'd exposed the shrapnel fragment. It was larger than the scans had suggested, a jagged piece of titanium alloy wedged against the vertebral artery. One wrong move, and Marcus would stroke out on the table. I'm at the interface, she murmured, more to herself than to the team. I need absolute stillness. No talking, no movement, no distractions. She gripped the fragment with the pituitary rongeur, applying gentle traction. It didn't budge. The scar tissue had fused it too tightly to the surrounding structures. I need to free the adhesions first, she said. Micro-scissors. Agent Washington, still functioning as her scrub nurse despite the chaos, handed her the instruments. Their hands touched briefly, and Zara felt a strange kinship with this woman she'd just met. Two warriors, different battlefields, same mission. She teased the scar tissue away fiber by fiber, working with painstaking patience. Sweat dripped down her temple, soaking into her surgical mask. Time became meaningless. There was only the tissue, the metal, the blood vessels she had to avoid. Fragment is mobile, she announced, preparing for extraction. She gripped it again, rocked it gently, felt it start to give. The metal slid free with a wet sound that made her stomach clench. But it was out. She'd done it. Foreign body removed, she said, her voice cracking with relief. Check motor evoked potentials. The neurophysiologist monitoring Marcus's nerve signals spoke up. All signals strong and stable. No deficits detected. Zara dropped the shrapnel into a specimen container, then nearly dropped the container itself when she got a good look at the metal under the bright OR lights. The edges weren't just melted. They were corroded, eaten away by something that left a distinctive green residue. Dr. Lopez, I need a tissue sample from around the extraction site, Zara said urgently. Something's wrong with this metal. Patricia collected the sample while Zara examined the shrapnel more closely. The corrosion pattern wasn't random. It was chemical, deliberate. Someone had coated this metal with something designed to degrade over time. This is evidence of poisoning, Zara said to Agent Washington. The general was right. Someone's been dosing him with something to make this shrapnel migrate. We'll get it to the FBI lab immediately, Washington said. Zara began closing, layer by layer, suturing Marcus back together with the same meticulous care she'd used to take him apart.
Her hands moved on autopilot, muscle memory from thousands of surgeries guiding her while her mind raced. Chen had been the saboteur, but he'd been coerced. Brennan had threatened his sister just like he'd threatened Bannister's daughter. How many other people had he compromised? How many other potential threats were still out there?
Final suture placed, she announced. Surgery complete at 08:47 hours. Total operative time, 2 hours, 45 minutes. As the team began cleaning up, moving Marcus to the recovery position, Zara stripped off her gloves and mask. She felt like she'd run a marathon uphill in full combat gear. Every muscle ached. Her head pounded. But Marcus was alive. The shrapnel was out. And they had evidence.
She walked to the observation room where Torres was waiting. Through the glass, she could see agents photographing the shrapnel, documenting everything.
Chen's talking,
Torres said without preamble.
He says Brennan approached him 6 months ago, told him that General Thompson was a traitor, planning to sell military secrets to foreign governments. Said Chen's patriotic duty was to prevent the general from leaving the hospital alive.
When Chen refused, they grabbed his sister off the street in San Francisco, held her for 3 days before releasing her with a warning.
So Chen's been living under this threat for 6 months, Zara said, waiting for the right moment.
Brennan's smart, Torres admitted.
He knew Chen wouldn't act unless forced, so he waited until Thompson actually needed surgery, then activated his asset. If Chen had succeeded, it would have looked like a surgical accident. No one would have questioned it.
Except Chen didn't succeed, Zara said. And now Brennan knows we're on to him. As if summoning a demon by speaking its name, Torres's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went grim.
When? How many? Understood. Lock down the hospital. No one in or out without FBI clearance.
She ended the call and looked at Zara.
We have a problem. 3 men just tried to access the hospital through the emergency entrance.
They had fake Pentagon credentials, and they were asking for General Thompson's room number. Security detained them, but Brennan knows the surgery failed. He's making his move. Zara's exhaustion vanished, replaced by cold fear.
Marcus is still in recovery. He's completely helpless for at least another hour while the anesthesia wears off.
Then we move him now, Torres said. We've got a secure ambulance waiting in the loading dock. We transport him to a military hospital on a different base where Brennan doesn't have access.
He's not stable enough for transport, Zara protested. His blood pressure could drop. He could have bleeding complications. Moving him now could kill him. Staying here definitely will kill him, Torres said bluntly. Brennan just tried to send a hit team into a military hospital in broad daylight. He's desperate, which makes him more dangerous than ever. We need to move the general now.
Zara's mind raced through the medical implications, weighing risks against risks. Finally, she nodded.
I'm going with him. If he crashes during transport, I need to be there to stabilize him. Agreed. Grab your medical bag. We leave in 5 minutes.
They moved through the hospital corridors at near running speed, Torres coordinating with agents via radio while Zara checked on Marcus in the recovery room. He was groggy but conscious, his eyes tracking her as she approached.
Hey,
he mumbled. Did we win?
We got the shrapnel out, Zara said, checking his vitals on the monitor. But Brennan sent people to finish the job. We're moving you somewhere safer.
Don't let them take you, Marcus said, his hand fumbling for hers. Promise me. If they come, you run. You testify without me. You finish this.
No one's dying today, Zara said firmly. We're both getting out of here alive. That's non-negotiable.
Agent Santos burst into the recovery room. We've got a situation. The men who tried to get in through the ER, they're gone. Security lost them in the chaos when a trauma case came in. They could be anywhere in the hospital. Torres swore. Double the guards on this room. No one gets in without my personal authorization. But even as she spoke, The lights went out. Emergency generators kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing the hallway in dim red emergency lighting. And in those 3 seconds of darkness, Zara heard something that made her blood freeze. Footsteps. Running. Coming toward them. "Get the general up," Torres barked, drawing her weapon. "Move, move, move!" Santos and Washington rushed to Marcus's gurney, releasing the brakes, wheeling him toward the service elevator. Zara ran alongside, one hand on the IV pole, keeping pace even as her surgical clogs slipped on the polished floor. Behind them, shouting, gunshots, the sharp crack of pistol fire in the enclosed space of the hospital corridor. "Go!" Torres screamed at them. "I'll hold them off!" They hit the elevator, Santos jamming the button repeatedly. The doors opened with agonizing slowness. More gunshots, closer now. Zara looked back and saw Torres crouched behind a nursing station, returning fire at 3 figures in dark tactical gear advancing down the hallway. The elevator doors started to close. Washington reached out to hit the door open button. "Don't," Torres said into her radio, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Get the package to safety. That's the mission." The doors closed. The elevator descended. And Zara stood there, gripping Marcus's hand, listening to the muffled sounds of gunfire above them, praying that Agent Torres was as good at her job as Zara was at hers. The elevator reached the basement. The doors opened onto the loading dock, where a white ambulance waited, engine running. 2 more agents, weapons drawn, flanked the rear doors. "Load 'em up," one of them said. "We've got a clear route to Andrews Air Force Base. 15 minutes if we push it." They transferred Marcus into the ambulance. Zara climbed in after him, immediately checking his surgical site, his vitals, his level of consciousness. Everything was holding. He was stable. They were going to make it. The ambulance doors started to close. A hand caught them. A man in a dark suit pulled himself into the ambulance with casual strength, a suppressed pistol in his other hand. He had cold eyes, and a face Zara had seen 20 years ago in Somalia, slightly younger then, but unmistakable now. Colonel Richard Brennan smiled at her. "Hello, Lieutenant Washington. It's been a long time. I really thought you were dead." Agent Washington lunged for her concealed weapon. Brennan shot her twice in the chest, the suppressed pistol making sounds like a stapler. Washington collapsed against the ambulance wall, gasping, her hands clutching at the spreading red stain on her scrubs. Zara screamed. Santos tried to draw from the front of the ambulance, but Brennan was faster, putting a round through the dividing window that made Santos duck. "Drive," Brennan said calmly to the driver. "Andrews Air Force Base, as planned. Any deviation, and I kill the surgeon, then the general, then you." The ambulance started moving. Brennan settled onto the bench seat across from Zara, his gun trained steadily on her chest. "You've been a remarkable thorn in my side, Doctor. You and the general both. I went to considerable trouble to make sure you stayed dead 20 years ago. Finding out you've been alive and well and performing surgery at Walter Reed, that was quite the unpleasant surprise." "You killed 17 people in that field hospital," Zara said, her voice shaking with rage and terror. 17 American soldiers. Your own people." 17 witnesses to a business transaction, Brennan corrected. "And I didn't kill all of them. Some died in the fire. Some died from their injuries. I just made sure the building burned thoroughly enough that no one could prove which was which." "You're a monster," Zara whispered. "I'm a pragmatist," Brennan said. "I saw an opportunity to make a fortune while serving my country. The weapons I sold to the warlords, they were surplus, destined for destruction anyway. I just redirected them to people willing to pay premium prices. The money funded black ops programs that kept Americans safe. Everyone benefited. Except the soldiers who died to keep your secret," Marcus said, his words slurred, but his eyes clear and filled with hatred.
Except the 3 men you had killed over the years to silence them.
Except Chen's sister and Bannister's daughter, who you threatened. Brennan shrugged. Acceptable losses in service of the greater good. Agent Washington coughed blood. Her eyes met Zara's, and in them Zara saw something that looked like an apology. Then Washington's hand moved, fast, pulling something from her ankle holster. A backup weapon, small caliber, easy to conceal. She fired twice. Both shots hit Brennan's center mass. He jerked backward, his own weapon clattering to the floor. His face registered surprise, then pain, then nothing at all as he slumped against the ambulance wall.
Greater good,
Washington gasped.
my ass.
Then she passed out. Zara dove for her medical bag, ripping it open with shaking hands. Washington was bleeding out, 2 entry wounds in her chest, possibly one through the lung based on the bubbling quality of her breathing. Brennan lay motionless against the opposite wall, his eyes staring at nothing, a spreading pool of blood beneath him.
Santos, I need you back here, now!
Zara shouted toward the front of the ambulance.
I've got an agent down with penetrating chest trauma.
Santos scrambled through the divider window, took one look at the carnage, and grabbed the radio clipped to his belt.
This is Santos. Agent down. Repeat, agent down. We need immediate medical support at Andrews. ETA, 10 minutes.
She doesn't have 10 minutes, Zara said, pressing gauze pads against Washington's wounds. The blood soaked through immediately, hot and arterial. She's got a tension pneumothorax building, her lungs collapsing. I need to decompress it now or she dies. She grabbed a large bore needle from her emergency supplies, the kind used for emergency chest decompressions in the field. Her hands moved on autopilot, years of trauma training overriding the fear and adrenaline. She palpated Washington's ribs, found the correct intercostal space, and drove the needle through. There was a hiss of escaping air. Washington's breathing immediately eased, her color improving from gray to pale. Not great, but better than dead.
Stay with me,
Zara said, applying fresh pressure dressings.
You hear me, Agent Washington? You just saved our lives. You don't get to die now. That's an order.
Washington's eyes flickered open.
Did I get him?
Zara glanced at Brennan's body.
You got him.
Good, Washington whispered.
Tell my mom I didn't die sitting behind a desk.
Then her eyes closed again, but her pulse was still there, thready but present. Marcus was struggling to sit up on his gurney despite the fresh surgical wound in his neck.
Zara, is Brennan really dead?
She moved to Brennan, pressing 2 fingers against his carotid artery. Nothing. No pulse, no breathing, no signs of life.
He's gone.
Check his pockets, Marcus said urgently. His phone, his wallet, anything. If he came here personally instead of sending more hired guns, he brought something important. Something he couldn't trust anyone else with. Zara hesitated only a moment before searching Brennan's body. She found a smartphone, still unlocked, showing an encrypted messaging app with active conversations. She found a wallet with multiple IDs under different names. And she found a thumb drive on a lanyard around his neck, hidden under his shirt.
Got it,
she said, pulling the drive free. Marcus, what is this? That's the insurance, Marcus said, his voice gaining strength despite his condition. Brennan was too smart to operate without leverage. That drive probably contains everything. Names, accounts, evidence of everyone he's bought or blackmailed over the years. It's his dead man's switch. Santos took the drive, sealing it in an evidence bag. We'll get this to the FBI crypto team. If it's encrypted, they'll crack it. The ambulance pulled through the gates of Andrews Air Force Base 8 minutes later. A full trauma team was waiting, rushing Washington onto a gurney and into the base hospital before Zara could even finish her handoff report. Another team took Marcus, wheeling him toward a secure medical facility while Zara jogged alongside, still covered in Washington's blood, refusing to leave his side. "Ma'am, you can't go in there," a young airman said, blocking her path. "This is a restricted area."
"I'm his surgeon,"
Zara said, her voice taking on the command tone she'd learned 20 years ago as a lieutenant.
"I just removed a foreign object from his cervical spine 3 hours ago. He's post-op and unstable. I go where he goes, Airman. That's not negotiable."
The airman looked uncertain until Marcus spoke up from the gurney. "Let her through. That's an order." They set Marcus up in a private room with armed guards posted outside. Zara immediately began checking his vitals, examining his surgical site, making sure the chaos of the past hour hadn't compromised her work. The incision looked good. No bleeding, no signs of infection. His neurological function was intact. Against all odds, he was going to be fine. "You should sit down," Marcus said, watching her with concern. "You've been on your feet for what, 20 hours straight? You just saved 2 lives in the back of a moving ambulance. You're allowed to rest."
"I'll rest when I know you're stable,"
Zara said, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the stethoscope. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her feeling hollow and breakable. Marcus reached out, catching her wrist gently.
"Zara, sit down, please."
She collapsed into the chair beside his bed, suddenly unable to stand any longer.
"I killed a man today," she said quietly. I didn't pull the trigger, but Brennan came after us because I saved you."
"Washington shot him because he was going to kill me. So I killed him. Indirectly. But I still killed him." "No," Marcus said firmly. "Brennan killed himself 20 years ago, when he decided that profit mattered more than the lives of his own soldiers. Everything that happened today, everything that led to him bleeding out in that ambulance, that was his choice, not yours. You saved lives, Zara. That's all you've ever done." She wanted to believe him, but her hands were still stained with Washington's blood, and she could still see Brennan's face in those final seconds, the surprise in his eyes when he realized he'd lost. A knock on the door. Agent Torres entered, her arm in a sling but otherwise intact. "Dr. Williams, General Thompson. Glad to see you both alive."
"Torres,"
Zara said, standing up quickly.
"I thought you were shot. I heard gunfire in the hospital."
"Took one in the shoulder, grazed my ribs," Torres said dismissively. "I've had worse. The 3 shooters are in custody. Turns out they were private military contractors, hired through a shell company owned by Novatech Industries. They're already talking, trying to cut deals. We've got testimony linking the hit directly to Brennan."
"What about Washington?"
Zara asked.
"The agent who was shot in the ambulance."
"In surgery now," Torres said. "One bullet hit her vest, stopped clean. The other went through her left lung, but the base surgeons think she'll pull through. You stabilizing her in the field probably saved her life." Zara felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders.
"And Chen? Bannister?"
"Both in protective custody, both cooperating fully. Chen's already given us a detailed statement about how Brennan recruited him, threatened his sister, and planned the surgical sabotage. Bannister provided financial records showing payments from Novatech to his offshore accounts, along with the original blackmail materials Brennan used to compromise him." Torres pulled out a tablet, swiping through documents. "We've also cracked the encryption on Brennan's thumb drive. General, you were right. It's his insurance policy. Names, account numbers, photographs, recordings. He's been documenting his entire criminal enterprise for years, probably in case he ever needed to trade information for immunity." Marcus leaned forward, despite the pain it caused. "How many people are implicated?" 17 so far, and we're still analyzing the data," Torres said grimly. "Pentagon officials, defense contractors, logistics officers, even 2 senators. Brennan built an entire network dedicated to smuggling weapons and embezzling military funds. We're talking about a conspiracy that spans 2 decades and involves billions of dollars."
"My God,"
Zara whispered.
How did he get away with it for so long?
By being smart and ruthless, Torres said. Anyone who got suspicious died in accidents or combat operations. Anyone who could be bought was bought. Anyone who refused was destroyed professionally or personally. He created a system where loyalty was rewarded and dissent was fatal. It would have kept working, too, if General Thompson hadn't stumbled onto those original after-action reports from Somalia. Marcus looked at Zara. If you hadn't survived that field hospital, if we hadn't both lived to tell the truth, Brennan would still be out there, still killing, still profiting off the blood of American soldiers.
But we did survive, Zara said softly. Both of us, against impossible odds.
Torres cleared her throat, which brings me to the less pleasant part of this conversation. You're both going to be testifying before Congress. The Senate Armed Services Committee has already scheduled emergency hearings. They want your statements, your evidence, everything. This is going to be the biggest military corruption scandal since Tailhook. Possibly bigger. When? Marcus asked. 3 weeks. That gives you time to recover from surgery, General, and gives us time to build an airtight case. But I need to warn you both. This is going to get ugly. Brennan's dead, but the people he worked with aren't. They're going to fight this with everything they've got. Expect character assassination. Expect harassment. Expect attempts to discredit your testimony. Let them try, Marcus said, steel in his voice. I've got evidence, witnesses, and 20 years of wanting to see justice done. They can throw whatever they want at me. I'm not backing down. Zara thought about the 17 soldiers who died in that field hospital, about the years she'd spent believing she was alone, that Marcus was dead, that the truth didn't matter anymore. About every life she'd saved since then, trying to atone for the ones she couldn't save.
Neither am I, she said. When do we start?
Over the next 2 weeks, Zara barely left Andrews Air Force Base. She stayed in guest quarters on the installation, splitting her time between monitoring Marcus's recovery and preparing her testimony with a team of military prosecutors. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, witness statements, the shrapnel itself proving deliberate poisoning. And now, Brennan's own files documenting his crimes in meticulous detail. But the opposition was fierce. News outlets friendly to the implicated senators began running stories questioning Zara's credibility. She was just a doctor with a vendetta, they said. A woman who'd fabricated a relationship with a general to gain fame and attention. The military had no record of Lieutenant Zara Washington serving in Somalia. Obviously, she was lying about everything. They're trying to erase you again, Marcus said one afternoon. He was recovering well, already walking short distances with minimal pain, his strength returning day by day. Just like Brennan did 20 years ago.
Then I'll just have to prove I existed,
Zara said. She'd spent the morning with military archivists, digging through old records looking for anything with her original name. The official records had been scrubbed, but unofficial ones remained. Unit photographs, commendation letters, even a combat journal kept by one of the soldiers who died in the field hospital, a young private named Danny Morrison, who'd written about the brave medic, Lieutenant Washington, who'd kept him alive for 3 extra days. Morrison's family still had his journal. Torres had tracked them down in Oklahoma, and they'd agreed to provide it as evidence. Reading Danny's words, his descriptions of Zara's calm under fire, her refusal to give up even when ammunition was running low and the enemy was closing in, had made Zara cry for the first time since this all began. He wrote that you sang to him, Marcus said, reading over her shoulder. When the morphine ran out and the pain got too bad, you sang old gospel songs your grandmother taught you.
His mother's favorite hymn was Amazing Grace,
Zara said, her voice thick with emotion. He made me promise that if he didn't make it, I'd find his mother and sing it to her, so she'd know he wasn't alone at the end. Did you? Marcus asked gently. Find her? I tried, Zara said. But Brennan's people got to me first. Told me Danny Morrison never existed, that I'd hallucinated him due to combat stress. By the time I got out from under their control, I couldn't even remember his mother's name. I failed him, Marcus. I broke my promise. Marcus pulled out his phone, typed quickly, then showed her the screen. Catherine Morrison. She lives in Tulsa. She's 68 years old, and she runs a grief support group for Gold Star families. I can have her here tomorrow if you want to finally keep that promise. Zara stared at the phone, at the photograph of an older black woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. You found her. I'm a 4-star general with access to military databases, Marcus said. Finding one woman in Oklahoma wasn't exactly a challenge. He paused. Do you want me to call her? Yes, Zara whispered. Please. Catherine Morrison arrived at Andrews the next day, accompanied by Agent Torres. She was exactly as her photograph suggested, warm, gracious, and carrying a grief that had never quite healed. When Torres brought her to the secure conference room where Zara waited, the older woman stopped in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. Lieutenant Washington, she breathed. They told me you were dead too. Mrs. Morrison, Zara said, standing up on shaking legs. I'm so sorry I didn't come sooner. I'm so sorry I couldn't save Danny. I tried. I swear I tried. But there were too many wounded and not enough supplies. And when the building started burning, I had to make choices about who I could carry and who I had to leave behind. And Danny was too injured to move. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Catherine crossed the room in 3 quick steps and pulled Zara into a fierce hug. Stop. Stop apologizing. My son wrote to me every week he was deployed. His last letter arrived 2 months after he died. He wrote about you. About the medic who stayed with him when everyone else evacuated. About how you held his hand and sang Amazing Grace while the mortars fell. About how you promised him he wasn't going to die alone. And he didn't, Lieutenant. Because of you, my baby boy didn't die alone. Zara broke. 20 years of holding herself together, of burying her grief under layers of professional competence and surgical precision, shattered. She sobbed into Catherine Morrison's shoulder, while the older woman held her, rocking slightly, humming the opening bars of Amazing Grace. You kept your promise, Catherine whispered. You were there with him. That's all a mother could ask for. They talked for hours. Catherine shared stories about Danny's childhood, his decision to enlist, his dreams of becoming a teacher after his service ended. Zara shared memories of Danny's humor in the field hospital, how he'd kept the other wounded soldiers' spirits up, even when his own pain was overwhelming, how he'd made her promise to tell his mother he loved her. He did love me, Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. And I loved him. And now, finally, I know what really happened to him. Not the lies the government told me about classified operations and sealed records. The truth. Thank you for that, Lieutenant Washington. Thank you for giving me the truth. As Catherine prepared to leave, she pressed something into Zara's hand. A photograph, creased and faded, showing a young black man in army fatigues grinning at the camera. Danny Morrison. 19 years old and full of life. Keep this, Catherine said. Carry it with you when you testify. Remember that you're not just fighting for yourself and General Thompson. You're fighting for Danny and all the other soldiers who died because powerful men valued money more than lives. Make them pay, Lieutenant. Make them pay for every drop of blood they spilled. I will, Zara promised. I swear it. The night before the congressional hearing, Zara couldn't sleep. She stood in her quarters at Andrews, staring out the window at the lights of Washington, D.C. in the distance. Somewhere in that city, In the halls of power she was about to walk into, people were planning how to destroy her credibility, how to paint her as a liar and a fraud. A knock on her door. She opened it to find Marcus standing there in civilian clothes, moving carefully but without assistance. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked.
Keep thinking about what happens tomorrow,
Zara admitted, letting him in.
What if they don't believe us?
What if Brennan's network is too powerful to break? What if we go through all this and nothing changes? Marcus took her hands, holding them firmly. Then we'll know we tried. We'll know we told the truth. And Zara, that matters. Even if the system is too broken to deliver justice, the truth matters. The people who've been living with lies for 20 years, people like Catherine Morrison, they deserve to know what really happened. We owe them that.
I'm scared,
Zara said quietly. I've performed hundreds of surgeries. I've held people's lives in my hands. I've made split-second decisions that meant the difference between someone living or dying. But tomorrow, walking into that hearing room, I'm terrified. So am I, Marcus admitted. But we're not walking in alone. We have each other. We have the evidence. We have the truth. And Zara, we have something else. We have the right to be angry. The right to demand accountability. The right to look those senators in the eye and tell them that their colleague was a murderer and a traitor, and that his crimes can't be swept under the rug anymore. Zara looked up at him, at this man who'd been dead to her for 20 years, who'd come back into her life, carrying the same wounds and the same determination that had made her love him in the first place. I never stopped loving you, she said. I tried. God knows I tried. But I never stopped. I know, Marcus said softly. I never stopped either. Even when I thought you were gone, even when I tried to move on, there was always this empty space where you should have been. And now you're here. You're real. And I'm not letting you go again. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the rest of our lives look like, we face it together. Agreed? Agreed, Zara said. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, mindful of his healing surgical wound. It was nothing like the passionate kisses they'd shared 20 years ago in the dust and danger of Somalia. This was softer, deeper, weighted with loss and survival and the hard-won knowledge that some things, some connections, were strong enough to survive even death and lies and 20 years of separation. When they finally pulled apart, Zara rested her forehead against his. Stay with me tonight. Not for anything physical, just stay. I don't want to be alone. You're never alone again, Marcus promised. Not as long as I'm breathing. They spent the night talking, filling in more gaps, sharing more stories. Marcus told her about the missions he'd run, the men he'd lost, the promotions that felt hollow without her there to celebrate with him. Zara told him about her first solo surgery, about the patient who'd coded on the table, and how she'd brought him back through sheer stubborn refusal to accept death. As dawn broke over Andrews Air Force Base, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they sat together in comfortable silence. Two soldiers preparing for one final battle. Not with weapons this time, but with words and truth, and the unshakable belief that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Ready? Marcus asked as the sun cleared the horizon. Zara thought about Danny Morrison and the 16 other soldiers who died in that field hospital. She thought about Catherine Morrison and all the other families who'd been lied to, who'd been told their loved ones died for classified reasons in operations that never happened. She thought about Agent Washington fighting for her life in the hospital because she'd been brave enough to protect witnesses to the truth. Ready, she said. They drove to Capitol Hill in an FBI convoy, surrounded by agents, passing through security checkpoints and metal detectors.
The hearing room was already packed with reporters, congressional staff, and observers. Cameras lined the back wall. Every major news network was covering this live. Senator Catherine Hayes, chair of the Armed Services Committee, called the hearing to order. She was a gray-haired woman in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in pursuit of the truth. This committee has been convened to investigate allegations of criminal conspiracy, weapons trafficking, and murder involving senior military and government officials, Hayes said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We will hear testimony from General Marcus Thompson and Dr. Zara Williams, formerly Lieutenant Zara Washington, regarding events that took place in Somalia in 2003 and their connection to recent attempts on General Thompson's life. General Thompson, you may begin. Marcus stood, walking to the witness table with only the slightest stiffness in his movement. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and began to speak. He laid out everything. The discovery of illegal weapons caches in the field hospital, the orders to evacuate, the helicopter crash that nearly killed him, the years of being told Zara was dead, the evidence he'd uncovered proving Brennan's smuggling operation, the poisoning that had forced him to need surgery, the assassination attempts. His testimony was clear, detailed, and backed up by documents that Torres provided to the committee. Financial records, shipping manifests, the shrapnel itself, with its distinctive corrosion pattern proving deliberate poisoning. Brennan's own files documenting 2 decades of crimes. When he finished, the chamber was silent, except for the clicking of cameras. Then it was Zara's turn. She walked to the witness table, feeling like she was walking through water. Every eye in the room was on her. She could see the senators who were implicated in Brennan's conspiracy, their faces carefully neutral, already calculating how to discredit her. She placed her hand on the Bible. She swore to tell the truth. And then she pulled out the photograph Catherine Morrison had given her. "This is Private First Class Danny Morrison," she said, her voice steady, despite the emotions churning in her chest. He was 19 years old when he died in the Mogadishu Field Hospital on September 14, 2003. He died because Colonel Richard Brennan set fire to the building to destroy evidence of illegal weapons trafficking. Danny died along with 16 other American soldiers whose names have been erased from official records because acknowledging their existence would have meant acknowledging the crimes that killed them. She set the photograph on the table where the cameras could see it clearly. "I'm here today to make sure they're not erased anymore," Zara said. "I'm here to tell you their names, their stories, and exactly how they died. And I'm here to make sure that the men and women who profited from their deaths finally face justice." And then she told them everything. Zara spoke for 3 hours straight, her voice never wavering, reciting the names of the 17 soldiers who died in that field hospital. She described each one in detail. Private Morrison, who loved his mother and dreamed of teaching. Corporal Jenkins, who carried photos of his newborn daughter. Sergeant Hayes, who'd been 2 weeks from rotating home. Specialist Rodriguez, who played guitar and sang country songs to keep morale up. She told the committee about the weapons crates stamped with U.S. military serial numbers, about Captain Reeves reporting the discrepancy and being told to keep quiet, about the mortar attack that wasn't enemy fire at all, but a deliberate strike on American positions, about crawling through burning wreckage trying to save men who were already dead. Senator Hayes leaned forward, her expression intent. "Dr. Williams, you're saying that Colonel Brennan, who at the time was a CIA handler in the region, orchestrated an attack on an American field hospital to destroy evidence of weapons trafficking?" "Yes, Senator," Zara said, "and when I survived and tried to report what I'd seen, I was threatened with court-martial and prison if I ever spoke about it. I was given a choice: accept a medical discharge and a new identity, or spend the rest of my life in Leavenworth for breaching national security. I was 25 years old and scared,
and I'd just watched 17 people burn to death. So I took the deal. I became Zara Williams, and I buried Zara Washington so deep I almost forgot she existed. One of the senators, a man named Crawford, who Torres had identified as being on Brennan's payroll, spoke up. "This is a compelling story, Dr. Williams, but you have to understand how convenient it seems. You claim to have witnessed these crimes 20 years ago, but you have no official records, no documentation, nothing but your word and the word of a general who coincidentally needed surgery that you performed. How do we know this isn't an elaborate fabrication designed to cover up a surgical error or personal vendetta?" Zara had been expecting this. She reached into her folder and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "This is Private Morrison's combat journal, written in his own hand, documenting daily life in the field hospital, including detailed descriptions of Lieutenant Zara Washington. This is a photograph from a unit barbecue showing me with Captain Thompson and 8 other soldiers, 5 of whom died in the attack. This is a letter of commendation signed by Captain Reeves recommending me for a Bronze Star for Valor, dated 1 week before the field hospital burned. And this," she held up a small piece of metal, "is shrapnel I removed from my own leg after the attack. It's the same titanium alloy as the piece I removed from General Thompson's spine, the same alloy used in the thermite charges that brought down his helicopter." She set everything on the table. "You want documentation, Senator Crawford? I have documentation. What I don't have is patience for men who'd rather protect a dead traitor's legacy than acknowledge the truth about how American soldiers died." The chamber erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Crawford's face went purple with rage. Senator Hayes had to bang her gavel repeatedly to restore order. "Doctor, Williams makes a valid point," Hayes said coldly, looking directly at Crawford. "We have physical evidence, witness testimony, and financial records proving a criminal conspiracy. Senator Crawford, unless you have specific evidence contradicting these allegations, I suggest you let the witness continue without further interruption." Crawford sat back, seething but silent. Zara could see him calculating, trying to figure out how to distance himself from Brennan without implicating himself further. She continued her testimony, walking the committee through everything. The evidence Marcus had gathered, the poisoning that forced him to need surgery, Dr. Chen's coerced sabotage attempt, the assassination team that stormed the hospital, Brennan's appearance in the ambulance, and his death at Agent Washington's hands. "And the thumb drive recovered from Colonel Brennan's body?" Hayes asked. "Contains detailed records of a criminal network spanning 2 decades, Zara said. "Financial transactions totaling over $3 billion, names of military officials, defense contractors, and yes, Senator, elected officials who either participated in or benefited from illegal weapons sales and embezzlement of military funds. The FBI is currently analyzing the data, but preliminary findings suggest this conspiracy involved at least 17 individuals in positions of significant power." Hayes looked at her fellow senators. "I think we need to see that data. All of it. This committee will be requesting a full briefing from the FBI within 48 hours. Crawford stood up abruptly. "Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself from these proceedings. I've just remembered a conflict of interest that requires my immediate attention." "Sit down, Senator," Hayes said sharply. "The doors to this chamber are locked, and there are federal agents posted outside. No one leaves until this testimony is complete. And if you have conflicts of interest related to this investigation, you'll disclose them now, under oath, or you'll disclose them to a grand jury. Your choice." Crawford sat down slowly, his face ashen. In that moment, watching a corrupt senator realize his entire world was collapsing, Zara felt a savage satisfaction. This was what justice looked like. Not clean, not easy, but real. She finished her testimony just after noon, her voice hoarse from talking, her hands shaking from exhaustion and spent adrenaline. As she left the witness table, Catherine Morrison stood up in the gallery and began to clap. Slowly, others joined her. Family members of the soldiers who'd died in Somalia, veterans who'd served with the fallen. And then, one by one, several of the senators themselves. Senator Hayes let the applause continue for a full minute before calling for order. "This committee will recess for 2 hours. When we reconvene, we'll hear testimony from FBI Special Agent Monica Torres regarding the evidence recovered from Colonel Brennan and the ongoing investigation into his criminal network." Dr. Williams, General Thompson, you're excused, but please remain available for follow-up questions. Outside the hearing room, Torres intercepted them with urgent news. "We've got movement. 3 more Pentagon officials just resigned citing health reasons. 2 defense contractors have filed for bankruptcy, and Senator Crawford's chief of staff just walked into FBI headquarters asking for immunity in exchange for testimony." "They're running," Marcus said with grim satisfaction. "Brendan's network is falling apart." "Good," Torres said. "Let them run. We've got their financial records, their communications, everything. Some will get deals, but the major players are going down. This is the biggest corruption scandal in modern military history, and you two just blew it wide open." Zara leaned against the wall, suddenly dizzy. The adrenaline that had carried her through the testimony was gone, leaving her feeling hollowed out and fragile. "I need air," she said. "I need to get out of this building." Marcus took her arm, supporting her weight. "Come on, there's a park across the street. We can sit for a while." They made it outside, past the reporters shouting questions, past the protesters who'd gathered on both sides of the issue. Some were waving signs supporting them, demanding accountability. Others were calling them liars and traitors. Marcus ignored them all, guiding Zara to a quiet bench under a large oak tree. She sat down heavily, her hands shaking so badly she had to clasp them together to make it stop. "Did we do it? Did we actually do it?" "We did," Marcus said, sitting beside her. "It's not over yet, but we did the hard part. We told the truth. The rest is up to the system." "What if the system fails?" Zara asked. "What if some of them get away with it? What if Brennan's people find a way to bury this again?" "Then we'll keep fighting," Marcus said simply. "But Zara, even if every single one of them walks away free, we still won. Because those 17 soldiers aren't forgotten anymore. Danny Morrison's name is in the congressional record now. His mother got to hear her son honored publicly instead of being told he never existed. That matters. That's victory, even if it's not the victory we wanted." Zara thought about Catherine Morrison's face when she'd said goodbye that morning. The peace in her eyes that came from finally knowing the truth. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe justice wasn't just about punishment. Maybe it was also about acknowledgement. About refusing to let the dead be erased. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then saw the message preview and gasped. "What is it?" Marcus asked, instantly alert. Zara showed him the screen. The text read, "Agent Washington is awake and asking for you. Room 412, Walter Reed. She says to tell you that she doesn't die sitting behind a desk." Nurse Chen. They were back at Walter Reed within 30 minutes, taking the elevator to the 4th floor where the critical care units were housed. Agent Washington was indeed awake, sitting up in bed despite the chest tubes and monitors, looking pale but fierce. "Dr. Williams," Washington said, her voice raspy but strong. "I hear you kicked ass in that hearing room." "I hear you kicked ass in an ambulance while bleeding out," Zara countered, moving to check Washington's vitals with practiced efficiency. "Your lung reinflated beautifully. No signs of infection. You're going to make a full recovery." "Good," Washington said, "because I've got testimony to give. Shooting a Pentagon official, even a corrupt one, requires extensive paperwork. I want to make sure everyone knows why I did it."
You did it because he was going to kill us, Zara said firmly.
You saved our lives. That's all the justification you need. Washington smiled slightly.
My mom's going to be so proud. I told her I joined the FBI to make a difference. Took me 15 years, but I finally did something that matters.
Over the next 3 weeks, the dominoes continued to fall. Senator Crawford resigned and entered a plea agreement, testifying against 6 other officials. Novatech Industries was raided by federal agents, its executives arrested on charges ranging from fraud to conspiracy to commit murder. The Pentagon launched an internal investigation that resulted in 17 forced retirements and 12 criminal referrals. Dr. Chen and Dr. Bannister both received immunity deals in exchange for their cooperation, though Chen voluntarily resigned from his residency, saying he couldn't continue practicing medicine knowing what he'd almost done. His sister was safe, reunited with him under FBI protection until the trials were over. Marcus healed steadily, regaining full strength and mobility. The shrapnel was gone, the poison out of his system, and for the first time in months, he could turn his head without pain. But he announced his retirement from the military, saying he'd spent 40 years serving his country, and it was time to serve something else. Someone else. Zara returned to work at Walter Reed, though she cut back her hours significantly. She'd been operating at full speed for 20 years, running from her past by burying herself in endless surgeries. Now, with the past finally confronted and processed, she found she didn't need to run anymore. 6 months after the congressional hearing, Zara stood in Arlington National Cemetery on a crisp October morning. Around her stood Catherine Morrison and the families of the other 16 soldiers who died in Somalia. The Pentagon had finally, officially, acknowledged their deaths and agreed to a memorial. Senator Hayes was there to dedicate it, along with the new Secretary of Defense who'd been appointed after Brennan's replacement was forced to resign over the scandal. The memorial was simple. A black granite stone engraved with 17 names and the words, "They served with honor. They died with dignity. They will not be forgotten." As Hayes spoke about sacrifice and truth and the cost of justice, Zara felt Marcus's hand slip into hers. He'd been with her through everything since that day in the examination room, through the testimony, through the media circus, through the nights when she woke up screaming from nightmares about the field hospital burning. "You okay?" he whispered. "I'm okay," she said, and realized it was true. She was okay. Maybe not healed completely, maybe carrying scars that would never fully fade, but okay in a way she hadn't been for 20 years. After the ceremony, Catherine Morrison approached them with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said, embracing Zara tightly. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving all of us this." "I should have done it sooner," Zara said. "You did it when you could," Catherine said firmly. "That's all anyone can ask. And now Danny's name is carved in stone. He's remembered. He's honored. That's everything." As the families dispersed, leaving flowers and photos at the memorial, Zara and Marcus stood together in silence. The autumn sun was warm on their faces, the leaves turning gold and red around them. "What happens now?" Zara asked. "After all this, where do we go from here?" Marcus pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold ring, no diamonds, no ostentation, just a plain band that had belonged to his grandmother. "I've been carrying this for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment," he said. "But I realized there's never going to be a perfect moment, not after everything we've been through. So I'm just going to ask." Zara Williams, formerly Lieutenant Zara Washington, the woman who saved my life twice, who fought through hell and came out stronger, who refused to let the truth stay buried. "Will you marry me?" Zara looked at him, at this man who'd been her whole world once, who'd been lost to her for 20 years, who'd come back into her life and helped her find justice for 17 dead soldiers. The practical part of her brain said it was too fast, too soon, that they barely knew each other anymore after 2 decades apart. But the part of her that had sung Amazing Grace to dying soldiers in a burning building, the part that had survived against impossible odds, the part that had learned the hard way that life was too short and too fragile to waste time on fear, that part knew exactly what to say. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, kissed her softly, and held her close while the autumn leaves fell around them like golden rain. 1 year later, Dr. Zara Williams stood at a podium in the Pentagon briefing room, facing an audience of military medical personnel and civilian trauma surgeons. She'd been asked to speak about combat medicine, about triage under fire, about making impossible choices when supplies were limited and time was running out. But she didn't talk about techniques or procedures. Instead, she talked about the 17 soldiers whose names were now engraved in Arlington. She talked about Private Morrison, who'd wanted to be a teacher, about Corporal Jenkins and his daughter, about every life lost because powerful men valued profit over people. "The most important thing I learned in Somalia wasn't a medical procedure," she said. "It was this. Their witness." When you see injustice, when you see corruption, when you see crimes being committed against the people you're sworn to protect, you have a duty to bear witness, to remember, to speak the truth, no matter how dangerous it is, no matter how powerful the people trying to silence you. She paused, looking out at the faces in the audience. Some were young, just starting their careers. Others were veterans who'd seen their own share of horror and compromise. 17 soldiers died in a field hospital in Mogadishu in 2003, Zara continued. For 20 years they were erased from official records. For 20 years their families were lied to. For 20 years, the truth was buried. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. It just waits for someone brave enough to dig it up and drag it into the light. She gestured to the back of the room where Catherine Morrison sat with her grandson, Danny's nephew, a young man wearing an Army ROTC uniform. Mrs. Morrison spent 20 years not knowing how her son really died. Now she knows. Now she has closure. Now her grandson can grow up knowing that his uncle was a hero who died serving his country, not a footnote in a classified file that officially never existed. The room was silent, except for the sound of Catherine Morrison quietly crying, tears that were equal parts grief and relief. "So, when you're out there in the field," Zara said, "when you're treating the wounded and making impossible decisions and seeing things that will haunt you for the rest of your life, remember this. Your duty isn't just to save lives. It's to bear witness, to remember the names, to tell the truth. Because the dead deserve that. The families deserve that. And the living deserve to know that when they serve their country, someone will remember them. Someone will fight for them. Someone will make sure they're not forgotten." She steps down from the podium to thunderous applause. As she made her way through the crowd, Marcus was waiting for her at the back of the room, his arm around a very pregnant Agent Washington who'd recovered fully and been promoted to lead investigator on the ongoing corruption cases. "Hell of a speech, Doc," Washington said, grinning. "You made half the room cry." "Good," Zara said. "People should cry. They should feel something. That's how change happens." Marcus took her hand, the simple gold band on her finger catching the light. "Ready to go home?" Home was a small house in Arlington, close enough to Walter Reed that Zara could still work, but far enough from the Pentagon that they could have privacy. Home was morning coffee on the porch and evening walks through the neighborhood. Home was the life they'd both given up hope of having, the future they'd been denied for 20 years. Finally theirs. But first, there was one more stop to make. They drove to Arlington National Cemetery, to the black granite memorial with 17 names. Zara placed fresh flowers at the base, the same ritual she'd performed every week for the past year.
I testified again today,
she said to the stone, as if the dead soldiers could hear her.
at another trial. Another corrupt official going to prison. That makes 11 so far. 11 people who profited from your deaths finally facing justice.
I know it's not enough. I know nothing can bring you back. But I wanted you to know that I'm still fighting. I'm still bearing witness. I'm still making sure the world remembers your names. Marcus stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. Do you think they can hear you?
I don't know,
Zara said honestly.
but it makes me feel better to talk to them, to tell them that their deaths meant something, that they weren't forgotten.
They weren't, Marcus said firmly, and they never will be, not as long as we're alive to remember them. They stood in silence for a long moment, paying their respects, honoring the fallen. Then they turned and walked back to their car, back to their life, back to the future they'd fought so hard to claim. Behind them, the memorial stood silent and dignified in the afternoon sun. 17 names carved in stone. 17 lives remembered. 17 truths finally told. And in the distance, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the sound of a woman's voice singing Amazing Grace, the promise of a young medic to a dying soldier finally, completely, eternally kept. The war was over. The truth had won. And Zara Williams, formerly Lieutenant Zara Washington, survivor of Mogadishu, savior of lives, bearer of witness, had finally come home.